and I've been with PG&E for a long time. But prior to that, I graduated from St. Mary's High School in Berkeley, and I, like many of the others that graduated, looking for a job because college wasn't for me and a lot for other people at the time. But I did go to junior college for a while and picked up what I could. And then pretty soon somebody told me about PG&E was hiring. So I went down to Oakland, and the personnel, they called him at the time, personnel manager, he told me, he said, Ron, this job is only for 3 months and 3 months only. But we want you, even though it's a limited time, we want you to work real hard during those 3 months. And I told him, certainly, sir, I sure will. And my first day on the job, somebody handed me a shovel. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I had the first starting classification, as of course it's all under the IBEW of the union, and it was a labor in the gas department. So I used that shovel and learned how to use it. I never used a shovel before. In fact, some of my members on the crew showed me, let me show you, Ron, let the shovel do the work, not you. Okay, fine. So I learned how to do that pretty good, pretty proficient at it. And I stayed there, then later on, the summer went by, and I thought that guy was going to come out and say, hey, pick up your stuff and go home, but I never saw him again the rest of my life, so I guess I could stay. So I did, and I went up the ladder, and the next step up was an apprentice fitter that learned to weld. And I went to the next step after a couple of more years, and that was a fitter that did all the welding on the job. Now they do gluing and everything else with plastic, but in those days, all the steel, everything was welded. And then I went to a foreman job. Then while I was doing my foreman's work, the superintendent came. He said, Ron, we'd like you to be an engineer for a while, gas engineer. And then pretty soon they upgraded me to a supervisor, and I just did all kinds. I operated equipment. I just had it all, and I was very, very fortunate that they gave me the opportunity, and I loved doing it, and I did my best. And that's it. Sure, I made mistakes like anybody else does, but you learn by the mistakes, and the number one thing, nobody ever got hurt, and that's what I was very happy about. And then while I was with, in that classification at PG&E, there was other things, the duties I liked, and somebody said, Ron, you ought to go into what they call then marketing department. And the marketing was to meet the customer, set up appointments where they get their service run and things like this, and join the local chamber of commerces and things like that. And that was a lot of fun, and I had great training through the managers. So I got, gee, I like that. I like the public speaking. And so I kind of thinking about it, and I said, you know, I loved radio. And I thought, I'm going to see if I can get into radio. So I went to a radio school in San Francisco, did not complete it, but I found a job. So I said, oh, that's great. Can't do any better than this. So I was with a station. I did top 40 radio. I did some talk show. And funny enough, the company did not like anybody moonlighting from PG&E. It didn't look good for somebody to get another job someplace. But I did work with them, and they loved it. And it happened to be, by luck, one of my first sponsors was PG&E. So anyway, we did that, and PG&E had a nice write-up about me and things like this, and I had other opportunities to go with major stations. But I thought, you know, I had a young family growing up. Am I going to take that risk and throw away? And I decided best I not to, because there's only a few percentage of people that really make it big in radio. And you probably know the people that are very successful in it. The rest of you never heard of. So, but then PG&E brought me into the department where I did a lot of narration on safety films. So we had a big department, and we had a regular studio in PG&E that were people from the professions, from KGO, all the network stations and everything, that they left that, they worked for PG&E, then they finally retired. So a lot of knowledge. So I picked up a lot of good experience there, and training, I liked it. I was on the air, had fun, and one of my biggest audience was the guys that used to work on my crew. And from there, I did a lot of training. I went into finally Safety, Health, and Claims Department, which is once was called, and I did claims work. Then for a while, I enjoyed learning that because the manager wanted both the experience of claims and safety, so it was a new field. So got into that, but safety was my love. I went back into safety, and I just kept going until finally I was supervisor of safety engineering. And then finally retirement came. Well, all work and no play, as they say. And I had little hobbies on the side that I started. And because back in my crew days, there was a lot of us in the field that were, as today, they love cars. And the person that got me into cars, he loved the old ones. And this one right here is a Model T. Model T made Henry Ford a fortune. It was the first car around 1915 that was assembly line. It's the T itself. They went through the alphabet, and a lot of those letters were never, it was on the drawing board, but never on the road. But the T was a big success. So Ford did great things. And then he was really a superstar when it came to Disabilities Act and so many of the things that we have now. Ford Company started it, and he wanted the people to work for him, and they did. Here's one that I had, and I was very fortunate in my hobbies. I made national cover of magazines. This is one of them. That's mine at home. You see how much it looks like this other one here. And then they went finally to a roadster, which just had the 2 seats, and then finally a closed car. So you get involved in hobbies, and which I love, and you know, you just keep on going, and pretty soon the phone rings, and it's people from across the United States someplace calling me, and how do you fix this or that? And I still get those calls all the time, but I appreciate doing it, and it's a lot of fun. So that's about my life with PG&E, my hobbies.
Where does safety fall as an item of importance to you and to the company that you worked for?
Safety is my number one passion, my number one concern. And the reason is, and the car has a lot to do with it. These cars, there was no seat belts in those days on any vehicle. You sat actually on the gas, where you sat on your seat in the car driving, right below that little cushion, that was a gas tank. And but safety is, like I said, a passion of mine.
Think of a piece of advice you want to give a 16 or 17-year-old young lady or young man as they get ready for whatever they're going to do after high school. What are a life lesson?
Well, that's a good question. I'm asked that quite a bit by high school students, what they think is the most important. Communication skills is number one. And when you do land that job, it may not be the job that you're looking for, but do the best you can at it. Do the best you can. Things will come later. Don't worry about how much this guy's getting paid or the other person's getting paid. Do what you agreed to do. The companies have hired you to do a job for a certain price. You accept it. So by accepting it, you're bound to do it or leave. It's just that simple. And move on. Some people's had hundreds of jobs. I've only had a few in my whole life, but I happen to fall into and just do what they told me to do, and I quickly advanced to where I was. And I'm very proud of things happening that way.